Hi, and welcome to this webinar. I'm going to be covering off today the three essentials for data orchestration migration and what to consider for planning. My name is Robert Risman, and I'm a technical lead implementation engineer. And my role at TLM is to make sure we migrate solutions from customers to make them seamless and effective as possible. So we'll get into it. What we'll cover off today, I call the triangle rule, but also to make it easy, I want to go through these components here. So we're going to cover off the discovery and execution and training and onboarding, and how I've encapsulated that is into that triangle rule. So I want to take a moment to go through what the triangle rule is and how this complements on how we approach those three components there. So effectively, the triangle rule and how I see this is playing a pivotal role during a migration phase. The key aspect of a triangle rule is how we provide that efficiency versus functionality, but also compliance. From that perspective, if we think of the use around the triangle design rule, if I have to provide a different analogy, let's use the kitchen as that perspective. So when we look at a kitchen and its functional design, there's obviously three areas in which you would operate in. If you're using the kitchen sink versus the stove and the fridge, it's going to formulate a particular triangle, and that there is going to be that efficiency and functionality, but also from a compliance perspective, because you don't, if there are multiple people in a kitchen, you don't want to have that collision. And so safety and compliance is obviously key. What we'll do in this webinar is we're going to touch on each of those components in that form of the triangle. So we'll go through that discovery, and in that discovery phase, there'll be 5 steps in which we'll approach that discovery. Similarly, with execution, we'll look into what's considered in that space. And to simplify that as well, I've also summarized that into 5 steps. And then lastly is that training and onboarding, which, if you hadn't noticed, it would also be in 5 steps as well. So the 3-5 rule is what I would call it. So 3 components to 5 steps, and we'll see how that formulates as part of the migration tactic there. So when we look at a migration, we obviously wonder why people migrate to TLM. So within TLM and our ecosystem, we provide the tag management side, event stream, but also audience stream as well. And that gives us the ability to unify the data sources from all the different activations, but also provide the relevant insights in real time, but also maintaining that regulatory compliance as well. So why people would migrate to TLM? Obviously, it's the real-time component to that by activating audiences across multiple channels at the same time. It takes away a lot of that headache. Uh, we have robust data governance controls in consent integrations, so we can easily integrate and manage to determine when to fire specific tags, but also audiences downstream to the different vendors that we integrate with. Um, we complement the marketing teams, so we will improve time to value for marketers, but also the analytics teams. We have some robust dashboard reports that can be custom built, so you can really look at and focus on specific key areas where you want to choose to optimize your campaigns to improve your budget spend. And then we move away from the whole batch-based data orchestration. Those are old school days. Real-time streaming is that approach that where we're heading now, and that's obviously going to be key to bring that relevance into your customer base. But lastly, with Telium, we also have a faster adoption. So we are starting to look at the more AI-driven landscape, but also providing that AI readiness in order to be ready for building those use cases out and then complement a lot of the architectures that will come out through the AI space. So when we look at the triangle rule, we're going to look at the first component to that and the stages that are involved. So obviously there's those 5 steps there that you see, but we'll just look at in terms of what to do when we look at discovery. So the first step off that is obviously we would align with your internal business teams, but we'll do a review of what your data sources are required. So we look at what is all the inbound data sources that are needed. So if that's API, do you have a data warehouse? What are the frequencies that are involved behind those? Because those cadences are also important. And we'll analyze that sort of data, but also associate it downstream. The primary goal is to look at what are your use cases. So we'll start from the end goal, but work our way backwards, and we'll apply what those data sources required in order to complement that. Similarly, if you're looking at a larger migration tactic, if you have existing tags in your ecosystem and you want to be able to consolidate and revise how you want to minimize the spend in terms of platforms that you have within your ecosystem, we can obviously do a tag audit as well. And by doing a tag audit, that's looking at how we can bring your existing or consolidate your existing tag management solution into Telium by leveraging our TRQ application from that side and running that assessment. So looking at what specific tags that you have and looking at what sort of integrations or how that currently integrates with your vendors is obviously key. And we'll do a gap analysis there to find what sort of tracking logic is required, what are the load rules, identify any sort of redundancies, because being a marketing team, obviously over time you would start to add tags and it's an opportunity to clean that up. So we will go through that exercise to identify what's key and what's relevant for you. The next step to that is obviously doing an audience audit. So from a server side perspective, if we're looking to activate cross channels, so through different, it could be an email channel, media channel, or a social channel, we want to make sure that we have the right audience that's fit for purpose. So when we're looking at a migration, it's not a lift and shift scenario. It's a case of understanding what's the current rules and conditions that are defined within your current audience segmentation, and how do we apply that similar sort of paired audience rule and condition into the Telium nomenclature. So that's an exercise that we go through, but having that clearly documented is the clear first step there. And then we have activation audit. So looking at the documented channels that we're using. So as I mentioned earlier, if we're looking at the email channel versus social or media channels, they're obviously key, but it's also an opportunity to understand if there's any sort of custom integrations that you have in place. So really understanding any custom API endpoints that you're using, we want to have that clearly documented because ultimately the primary goal is moving you from one platform to the next, which is us, and being able to continue on without impacting your overall use cases and strategy from a business perspective. And then lastly is the privacy regulations. So being fairly new to this space, consent is obviously a hot topic. If you haven't got the right privacy regulations in place, we provide the base foundations to get started in that area. And having clearly documented consent integrations or behaviors is key. And then we can work with you to implement those conditions and logic so that we can have you future-proofed and ready for a GDR or CCPA perspective. So that's just the discovery component, and we can see how that triangular rule sets to one side. Obviously, the next side of that, we look at how we take that discovery and then put that into the executional phase as part of that migration. So when we look at the execution phase, again, we look at them in 5 steps, trying to keep it simple here. But we look at firstly what we've done off the back of that discovery. So all the grunt work and a lot of the documentation that's been prepared actually puts us in a position to look at how we can do the execution and tackle how we migrate a lot of those components over into Telium. So we'll look at the data layer and the event standardization. So we look at from the different data sources that are inbound from across web, app, it could be from APIs. We look at how we translate that and have a consistent Telium nomenclature that's the standard event taxonomy used for consistency. But also this is the primary spot in which we make sure that you are AI ready for future-proofing yourself. This is obviously key from the data layer perspective. So having that context defined early on actually puts you in a good position to be AI ready in future. The next part from that is taking on that tag audit from the discovery phase. We'll then start to do a lot of that mapping, but also from an audience perspective. So this is where you'll work with one of our implementation engineers, and we start to go through and integrate a lot of those tags in our marketplace and an audience as well. We have over 1,300 native tags that exist in our marketplace today, and a lot of those are straightforward lift and shift from an internal UI perspective, which makes it a lot easier to use. The key in our approach is to make it simple by design. So with our UI, it's quite easy to just click and point in terms of configuration for tags, and similarly for audiences as well. Once we have a construct of the event standardization in place, defining those audience and segments is key. And by using the items from the audience discovery that we've done in the previous slide, then we'll be able to match up and pair what are the conditions from an audience perspective so that it correlates to the same business logic within Telium under Telium's new event standardization names that we've defined. So once we have a lot of those tags and audiences set up, if you are then looking at how to provide that governance or that consent layer, one of the features within Telium is that we can easily associate and start assigning certain governance rules and purposes to the tags and audiences. So we can embed those privacy controls across that spread of configurations to easily make it easier for you to manage. By the way, that means is if you are looking to have specific tags only fire against a certain purpose group, then we would adhere to those privacy controls. So there's less work that you would need to consider because we're handling a lot of those rules and conditions for you. And it's also customizable as well if you choose to change that later. So once we have the data layer, the tags and audiences in place, and consent is obviously built out, this is all within the UAT environment that would obviously be working with initially. The next step is to plan out what that phased deployment would look like. So we would work with your internal teams to really understand what the best way is to approach it. So if we're looking to shift from a UAT environment to production, then we would work with you guys to put what that plan is. We'd look at certain timings, cadences, code freezes, because ultimately we want the best solution for you and the best outcome to go live. And then once we go live, it doesn't stop there. So we look at validating all those events and a lot of the data flowing from inbound to tags firing to outbound activations and monitoring to ensure that your data quality is there. There's minimal errors that are being generated from the integrations that are there, but also is it actually helping you downstream? So we actually would work with you to look actively within those downstream vendors. So across your email channels, social channels, media channels, to make sure is everything working as expected from day one. So from that, you can see from the discovery, we had those 5 steps. Execution, again, 5 steps. And then lastly is that final step of that, the triangle rule. So looking at that training and onboarding. So what does that look like from a Telium perspective? So when you're using Telium and it's a new platform, like with any new platform, there's always some uncertainty. It is a new shiny tool. How do you use it? Where do you start? What do you do? What we try to encourage during implementation is to be curious. You'll have access to an implementation engineer, a customer success and support team. You have ask any question you like, and we'll be there to support you. But the main part is we'd like you to be curious to explore both the technical and business use to operationalize the platform efficiency internally at your end. At Telium, we also offer virtual and in-person training. So speak to one of our CSMs and they'll gladly share with you a timeline of when that availability is, and you can slot yourself in and learn at your own pace. It's the easy courses to do and helps you understand Telium at a different level. But if you want to further challenge yourself and take yourself to that next level, we do have certification courses that's suitable for the marketers, analysts, and developers. I'm highly encouraged if you want to be certified. It's great, a great achievement to have, and we give you that recognition through a badge that you can apply as status for completing that certification as well. But in all these cases, we know that sometimes we can be time constrained and not have the ability to do a lot of these things, but you do have access to our ongoing support team that's available 24/7, but also our learning resources. We have a great hub called our Telium Learning Center where you can easily look at documentation for references. But similarly, our customer success team and support team are always on standby to handle any sort of ad hoc questions that you have. But by doing so, if you're able to tick all the above 4, then you're pretty much on the best alignment in your own business to look at both how you can complement the technical and business users to build that center of excellence. Ultimately, that's the goal, and if we can get you to be trained and be curious and using our product, then you're on your way to building success. And that success is that triangle. So if you're able to complement all sides of that triangle, you'll have a rigid structure there and you'll create that efficiency, you'll create that compliance, but also that functionality as well. And, you know, if a triangle fails, it takes one of those to fall out. So, sticking to that triangle rule is the key to success. So, what are the key takeaways through a migration with Telium? So, some of the key takeaways that I would think of is to plan ahead. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a lift and shift. It's an opportunity to redesign based on the business needs and taking on board Telium's event first approach. You know, we want to look at prioritizing business value. So focusing on the use cases that deliver the early wins. Some of the key examples that I can think of that are common, cart abandoner, definitely an ad suppression. These are really key and consent-based targeting. So in line with business value, enabling the teams internally and getting comfortable with new tech because it's always that new area that's the concern, the shady bit. But empowering cross-functional teams with Telium, both technical and business users, having them collaborate through a single user interface is also key. So we would work with you to look at how we can better coordinate with teams, but also support you through that journey to get you comfortable in that space so that you are ready to take along Telium as a whole. So that just closes off the triangle rule and hoping you found that useful and enlightening. The key takeaway there is also that 3-5 rule. So within Telium, we have three components to consider for a migration and those 5 steps in order to be successful to migrate effectively over to Telium. I hope you found that useful. Thank you for listening. If you're looking to migrate efficiently, let's chat. You can see my email there on the screen and looking forward to hearing from you.